Hello everyone, this is James Shore with another test-driven development video. I'm recording this on March 8th, 2012, picking up where we left off in the last episode, which was had just finished factoring out a new method to do our assertions on file saving. And I just want to clean that up a little bit more. Namely, I put a message in there, but it doesn't seem to be needed. So I'm going to take that out in a sense by providing a default. And that should still work. And now I can take this out. It's nice to be able to provide the value, which is why I left that code in, but I don't always need to. When I've only got one assertion in a method, it kind of speaks for itself. All right, so I think this is good for now. I may have missed something, but I think this is going to be enough to remind me when I come back to do the file loading. When I do the file loading, I'm going to probably change assert file matches to not look at the strings, but actually to do the load and make sure it matches in that respect. But that will come later. So I think, well, let's see. I guess writing the file is pretty much done. I can't think of anything else off the top of my head to do here. Let's just look at this code quality, make sure it's where we want it to be. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Yeah, I think this is good. Okay, let's go back to our scratch pad, see what else we've got to do. I realized when I was watching some of the old videos, editing them together, that when I refactored the value types into their own package, I left this behind. This really is a part of value type. And actually moving that over makes me pretty happy, because it makes more sense to me for value types to render themselves than for domain objects to render themselves. So I'm happy to see that there's really no concept left in the code of the domain objects rendering themselves. Instead, we have value types rendering themselves. And I think of value types as objects that cross package boundaries. They go throughout the entire system. Whereas domain objects should really just be used, perhaps used from the UI, but not go back to the UI. So I like this refactoring. It makes a lot of sense to me. Let's make sure that worked. Looks like it did. Okay, so now we have this question of the save file data clump. And let's take a look at that. So the issue here is that save file is taking the starting balance, cost basis, yearly spending, and furthermore, once we start adding more to this configuration panel, which we will eventually, we're going to have to continue to update. So that's sort of a confirmation that, yeah, this is a data clump and there's a problem here. So the question is, do we want to get rid of that data clump? I'm a little torn on that. I feel like we haven't learned everything there is to learn about how saving is going to work, for example. So if we refactor that data clump now, will we make our our persistence logic more painful in the future? I'm not sure. Um, I think I'd like to actually hook this up and make this the whole saving work before we refactor that data clump, because persistence persistence can be tricky if you're not using a object relational mapper or some sort of third-party persistence library. Um, it raises all kinds of really interesting questions, and that's one of the reasons I'm not using a third-party library. The other reason is that because persistence is tricky, I think it's actually possible to come up with a better design if you do a purpose-built persistence mechanism rather than using a library. The libraries tend to be really complex to handle a lot of very varied situations, and I think we can come up with something similar, simpler, particularly something that is a lot easier to test. You'll notice that I'm not using any sort of dependency injection framework in this code yet, and I'm hoping not to. And in fact, I'm hoping to get rid of all test doubles, mock objects, and so forth entirely. Now, that may not be possible, but if I had to use a dependency injection framework, it really wouldn't be possible. Um, so so using a third-party library kind of ties you into all the complexity there. Um, and I'd like to avoid that. So, and I think we'll see some interesting and neat results come out of that. At least that's what I'm hoping. Actually, it could end up being a giant mess, but hey, that will be interesting and entertaining too. So because we're building our own persistence mechanism, and because persistence mechanisms are tricky, because of the way they have to stuff data back into the application when you do a load, um, I don't want to resolve the data clump just yet. I suspect that we'll learn a lot as we do the the rest of the persistence mechanism. We integrate the saving into the rest of the application, and we integrate the loading. So I guess enough talk about that. Let's actually do it. Save file takes those three variables. Now we need application model, which is where the save happens, to actually call file.save or save file.save. And yeah, let's go ahead and look at that. So we've got our application here. Right now, when we do a save, it just does save called. Now we're going to need some tests around this, but just as a spike, oh, you know what? I just realized, I don't know how long this has been hanging out. We have an ignored test. Well, let's make a note to fix that. Boy, I think that's been in there for hours and hours of recording. I don't even remember where that came from. Some XUnit libraries actually turn the bar yellow when you have an ignored test, and I really like that because I don't want to leave undone stuff like that. Anyway, so we've got a spike here, and I think what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to say new save file dot save. Why is this? And then we'll say starting balance, starting cost basis, or no, not, yeah, and yearly spending. What is wrong here? Oh, and we need to know that this is a user entered dollars. Okay, so that actually shouldn't be a problem. So I'm not doing this test driven yet. I'm just doing a spike because I'm trying to experiment with how the design's going to work. And actually that did reveal some new information to me just now. But once I've got that figured out, I'm going to undo it and redo it with a test. But that did remind me that I need to make this a user entered dollars. And I'm just guessing about whether or not this will even compile. I think it will because I know we're returning user entered dollars elsewhere. Does not compile. Okay, well that is okay. Now that should have worked. I guess there. And all the tests should still pass. Yep, good. So let's just stop and take a moment to think about that. Was that refactoring I just did that was, it forced some ripple effects through the code, was that actually a good thing? Well, what we've got here in the UI is that the configuration panel has the various dollars fields in it. Those are dollars text fields, and when they're changed, it calls set yearly spending on the application model. And on the application model, when we set the value, we set it, just to what the value is. I think that makes sense. Yeah, I think that's okay. And in fact, we need to make this into user entered dollars as well. I think that's all okay. All right, so now down here, still not working because it needs that throws declaration, which we'll have to resolve. We don't, that's a user, actually, you know what? We're not going to throw it. We'll just squelch it for now. That's bad code, but this is just a little spike to see if it's going to work the way we think it is. Okay, that is passing tests. Now let's go ahead and run it and just look at the results. So and let's save this and says save was called, and it looks like it's there, and it looks like it worked perfectly. Okay. So that's what we need to actually do in a test-driven way. We'll pick that up next time. Thanks very much for watching, everybody. I will catch you next time.